Hey, everybody. Thanks for attending for today's presentation. I'm Pei from Monash University. I'm more than excited to share with you what I've found, especially for the first time to attend such academic conference, literally in person. Nice to meet you all. Without further ado, now let's begin for today's presentation. The title for today's presentation is a first look at CI/CD adoptions in open source Android apps. The presentation includes the following 6 parts. We will begin with terminology to thoroughly explain what CI/CD is and the functionalities for Android apps in building and publishing for Android device users are, and then the motivation behind this first investigation. That is why we dominate such investigation, followed by the 2 research questions, and then the methodologies we adopted to acquire the necessary figures and data from the collected datasets from the widely open source projects hosting sites, such as GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket, and then the analysis results. Finally, we will give out some insights to conclude our findings. Terminologies, the term acronym CI/CD is presented in our presentation title. Therefore, we first need to explain what CI/CD is. CI is an acronym for continuous integration. It means frequently merging of several changes into the main development branch during the whole development process, while CD refers to continuous delivery under most cases, and it also can be refers to continuous deployment, but short often. In our study, we adopt CD as continuous delivery. It technically means when teams produce software in short cycles with high speed and frequency so that reliable software can be released at any time. Nowadays, continuous releasing high reliable artifacts for developers are very important, both for developers and software users, especially among the highly growing Android mobile community. Figure 1 shows the typical working process for CI/CD systems. Once new changes has been done to the source code, the developers and the certain trigger conditions have been satisfied. The CI system will be involved to build and test the whole project automatically to check if such changes will induce any potential bugs. If it has been finished, then the continuous delivery and the deployment are tightly related. Continuous delivery usually means that the projects will be automatically uploaded to a repository such as GitHub and then ready to deploy if they are built and tested successfully in CI. Even so, various efforts have been put into studying CI/CD in open source projects. Our community has not yet explored the adoption of CI/CD in Android apps, one of the most popular types of software. Therefore, we conduct such first empirical study about CI/CD adoptions in open source Android apps. To be more specific, we are interested in 2 research questions in our first empirical analysis. That is, to what extent is CI/CD adopted by Android projects? And the second one is how are CI/CD services leveraged by Android developers? To have a clear view over the adoption of CI/CD among Android projects and Android app developers, we first need to collect open source Android projects. To collect such projects, we put our attention on 3 most popular Git-based open source hosting sites, including GitLab, GitHub, and the Bitbucket. As we all know, GitHub has attracted more than 83 million developers and has held over 200 million repositories, and list 35 million of them are public repositories. After we retrieve these open source Android projects, we need to make sure what type of CI/CD services are utilized at first. We first perform an exploratory study by searching online and reviewing the literature to identify popular CI/CD services in the wild. and which are available for developers to adopt. This table lists the easily adoptable 15 popular CI/CD services among the open source Android projects developers, including 3 self-hosted services by our dataset sites. The last 3 rows shows the site's proprietary CI/CD services. The second column presents the proprietary information about the CI/CD services configuration files or directories where the configuration files are stored in. This information can be leveraged to check whether the corresponding CI/CD service is adopted or not, which has been used in our investigation work. To determine if such Android repositories was built by any of the popular CI/CD tools or services, we use Python scripts to traverse the file directories for each collected Android app project. Figure 2 represents an overall working process of our methodology for selected CI/CD services only, for which we first leverage the special file Android manifest.xml, the essential configuration file for Android projects to select Android projects first from our collected hosting sites. Then we scan the repository files again to look at dedicated configuration files, as indicated in the second column in table 1 to determine the usage of CI/CD service. For example, we will regard a given app as leveraged Travis CI as long as they are able to locate the travis.yaml file. With the necessary dataset, we now focus on the research question. The first one, to what extent is CI/CD adopted by Android projects? We use Python scripts to automatically explore the usage of CI/CD services in all the collected open source Android apps. The Python scanner eventually finds that only 7,899 apps accessed CI/CD services, accounting only for slightly more than 10% of Android app repositories. The total number of Android repositories we collected is more than 78,000. This result suggests that Android developers still hesitate to integrate CI/CD services into their daily development. In addition, among the 15 selected popular CI/CD services, only 4 of them are adopted by open source apps. The 4 services are Travis CI, Circle CI, GitHub Actions, and Bitbucket pipelines. Table 2 further summarize the actual numbers of Android projects. With regard to those so-called CI/CD services, different services are listed if the corresponding special files can be detected by our script in the Android projects. And furthermore, we also check if the adoption of CI/CD is helpful in promoting the Android apps. Figure 4 summarizes the experimental results. It illustrates that the distribution of the number of stars given to Android projects configured with CI/CD services and those without any CI/CD service. On average, the projects adopting CI/CD services receives more stars than those without any CI/CD service, suggesting that there is a relationship between the number of stars and the adoption of CI/CD services. And now the second research questions, we investigate the usage of CI/CD services during development of Android projects. Figure 3 summarizes the distribution of the number of Android projects that involve 3 different types of CI/CD configuration files. Indeed, for GitHub Android projects, there are 291 projects containing more than 1 special configuration files. However, the adoption of CI/CD services in the source code does not guarantee that such service would be deployed in the process of Android development. Table 3 summarizes the experimental results. In this work, we only consider the Android projects hosted on GitHub and those who were successfully built and listed once with CI/CD services. That means the build logs can be located then as shown in the table, the GitHub Actions occupies the maximum portion with the rate of more than 93%. And furthermore, we investigated the CI/CD processes from the retrieved build history for those apps that have successfully run CI/CD services. Figure 5 shows the execution count of the configuration workflows fulfilling the automation process, comparing with the recent studies in services Circle CI and Travis. It shows clearly that developers in Android community may not fully exploit the ability as the execution counts are relatively small. We also explored the difference of the number of stars given to the Android projects only configured with CI/CD special files and those processed with CI/CD services. That means the logs can be allocated successfully. Figure 6 shows such results. And the number of stars given to the projects actually utilized such CI/CD services will receive more stars than those just with configurations. Now, we conclude our investigations that only slightly more than 10% of Android apps in our dataset have adopted CI/CD services, showing that CI/CD adoption in Android apps is still rare. And apps with CI/CD services generally receive more stars on GitHub than those without. Suggests that CI/CD is a useful technique for app developers to implement and maintain apps. And developers tend to use GitHub Actions to fulfill their automation process of building, testing, and deploying, etc. The projects that actually executed CI/CD services gain more attention from other fellow developers. That's for today's presentation. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.
No questions?
Any questions?
I have a question regarding the data set. So you have about 70K application. Huh?
Yeah. More than 7,800.
But on GitHub, you can find a lot of toys apps, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Did you remove this project from?
Yeah, we did some general filters. Yeah, we only have these dataset. Yeah.
Because this could have a huge impact on the result. And if you all the toys add, for example, of course, I will not use CI/CD platform.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we did some preliminary filters, but it's hard to technically to
And did you also check is the project are still maintained?
Yeah, we actually only find that the projects are still maintained in recent years.
Thank you. Other questions?
No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you again, Pei.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Well, since the morning. And we will start again at 1:30, I guess. And go yeah. Okay. Thank you.